Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of Chiefs Focus First and 10. You are here with JP Caleb, and we got our friends from across the pond from Under the Center podcast. What's up, guys?
How's it going? Happy to be here.
I'm glad you guys
delighted
made it,
to be asked on. Thank you guys so much.
Taylor,
No problem,
how's it
guys. We're
going?
happy to have you. Thank you.
Yep. Well, it's been an interesting off season, to say the least. Crazy draft. One of the best drafts I've seen in a long time. I was excited as can be for us anyway. I don't know how you guys feel about your prospective teams. We'll get into that, but the Chiefs, I think they really killed it in the draft. I mean, they picked exactly who they needed, positions of need, great players. Second year in a row that they've just, and of course it remains to be seen how they're going to end up on, during a live game. But if it's any if it's indicative of what they did last year with their draft picks, holy mother of God, I mean, they're going to be good. They went directly after what they needed on the defense side of the ball, and they picked up some offensive weapons as well that are going to be really good. Plus, their undrafted free agents they did really well with. But it's going to be a fun year. I'll put it that way. It's going to be a fun year to watch the transformation. It's basically like the second coming of Mahomes, because he didn't have Tyreek Hill anymore. He doesn't have the one speedy wide receiver and then just the tight end and a couple of fill-ins. He's got, well, let's not forget about McColl. He's good too. But now you got a bunch of guys that are, 6 foot plus, huge body wide receivers that are going to be able to go out there and snatch the ball out of the air and take people down while they're doing it. So it's going to be an interesting time to see how other teams react and how they are able to play us, which is going to be, I think it's going to be hard for them. But Seattle made a move, and I know we got a Seattle fan here. And I want us to get your perspective on Seattle's move there, man, real quick.
D move, yeah. Well, I guess D move of letting Bobby go was pretty tough.
Yeah.
But no, but seriously, yeah, it has implications for the Chiefs, of course, because Russ is a Bronco now and he is playing in the AFC West. Yeah, it was a bit of a shock. The haul, people criticize, what is it, 2 1s, 2 2s, a couple of other picks, and you get 3 players as well, of course, one of which Drew Lock, and we can probably get into that in a little bit too, because you know better than most of how I want to say talented Drew Lock is, but that's maybe just being a bit too complimentary. But this has been right on the wall. Writing's been on the wall for a couple of years with Russ. He hasn't been happy. Obviously the famous interview he gave last year with Peter King, and saying I've got to be protected more. I think that was sort of him getting ready to move, and then obviously his agent giving those 4 teams of like, we don't want to move, but if we do move, these are the teams we want to move to, which I don't think the Broncos are one of the teams. Just thinking back to that, yeah, it's strange. It's going to be strange now seeing a Seattle Seahawks offense without Russ under center. They've turned their picks into some good moves as well. So, and the players that they gotten back, like Shelby Harris, is someone that's going to be important on the defensive line, and Noah Fant is a good tight end that we're going to need as well. Drew Lock we'll see with Drew Lock. Even if he's there for a year, I can make do with that for a year. And, if they don't have a good record next year, use that, high draft pick at maybe getting one of the other quarterbacks coming out next year. But, it's a lot of moves. A lot of interesting moves. I like some stuff they've done on free agency, addressing some stuff on the defense, especially. They have a new defensive coordinator, a new defensive assistant, head coach. So, and they're going to try a new scheme. I think they're going now to more of a 3-4 scheme rather than the 4-3 that they were running with the famous, what was it, cover 2 that they've always been going with. So they're going to change that up, which is going to be good. That's the one thing that really excites me, actually, because I am a defensive guy and I like the changes that possibly they're going to make. So we'll see. It's not all doom and gloom as it was when it was Russ getting traded, and then the very next day it was Bobby Wagner getting released. So, there's some potential there. It's a strange, exciting time knowing that you're going through. They don't want to say the word rebuild, I'm sure, in Seattle, but it kind of is a bit of a rebuild, and it's a bit exciting to see what the future holds and see what is going to happen with the team.
I got you. I got a quick question for, and this is kind of just want to know your thoughts when it comes to the whole Russell Wilson situation. And Fionn, you could probably understand where I'm coming from when it comes to the Washington football team side. How important is it that a team like the Seahawks or the Washington football team needs to listen to the quarterback? So we see with the Chiefs, they're listening to Patrick Mahomes. They're letting him have input on moves. Do you guys think that that's probably the issue, probably why quarterbacks are leaving teams at a quicker rate than what we've seen ever before? Because what I've noticed is that if you're not surrounding your franchise player and doing things to kind of help them, but the team success as a whole, it causes them to struggle. So what are you guys' thoughts about that?
Fiona, I'll leave that up to you because you actually have a good take on this, that you were quite adamant about not giving quarterbacks power. You go ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a big person of, hey, look, you're paying your GM money, you're paying them money to run the team. Sure, maybe the odd little bit in terms of the game plan, I like this pass, I like this system, maybe a little bit the quarterback. But for me, I think the quarterback should be playing the game, doing their best to obviously improve the offensive side of the game. But when you start getting too much power, too much calls on who gets hired, who gets fired in terms of the head coaches, the GMs, the reality is, like, a lot of these quarterbacks, it's not like they come out of the game and then become legendary GMs. We've seen a couple of them here and there, but it's not a guarantee that you know how to run a football team or you know the best coaches. So I'm a big proponent of, hey, look, you're paying a guy a lot of money to run the team. Let's leave it up to him. And you're paying the quarterback a lot of money to go win games on the pitch. And I think if they can concentrate on that a little bit more. But to your second point, absolutely. I think we're seeing it throughout the league. Quarterbacks, obviously, they demand a lot of money, and rightly so, in the NFL. And they want to hit up targets where they feel like they can get the most out of their not only playing style, but also like their name and different marketing opportunities that they have. And I think head coaches as well, we're starting to see if now the owner of football teams, and as a Washington fan, I can preach to this, the owner is becoming important. Will the owner let you do what you want to do as a GM, as a head coach? So yeah, I obviously we're a little bit younger fans, me and Dara, in terms of into the NFL, but to me it seems like that maybe last 5-10 years, politics of who is already at the team has become a much bigger deal in terms of markets, freedom to do what you want to do and make the changes that you want to make.
Okay, I see what you're pointing. Now, I'm just gonna raise up the level, kind of what you're saying. So how I've seen this, I don't know if JP would agree with me, and I don't know if Dar would agree with me this too. Kind of what I've seen personally is when you got your franchise quarterback and they're winning games and doing things for you, I feel like personally they should get a say when it comes to certain roster moves, such and such an Aaron Rodgers getting someone reliable like a Randall Cobb. Patrick Mahomes bringing in people that he knows that can kind of help the offense. Because I feel like from the past, and I've seen this, I know, JP, you've been around the team a long time, you see GMs bring in players that aren't really benefiting the team. They're just there to sell tickets. So I see both sides of the argument. I think you bring a really good point. I just want to make, like, just from my understanding, I feel like it's a give and take because you have kind of what's going to happen. You got the bounce. You got your great guy. You got the GM that's there, but also feel like in order to be successful as a whole, there needs to be, I don't know, like not a perfect triangle, but like the GM, the coach, and then also the owner need to be in cahoots and understand, okay, what are we doing? What's the plan? And I think that's something that the Chiefs have done a really good job of. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Brett Veach, and then also, you say Square, but all those guys are continuing to work with each other and trying to make sure, okay, how can we make this team better? Let's talk about it. But I do see what you're saying, because I think when we see quarterbacks like a Baker Mayfield, that's where you see some issues come about. And I know JP would agree with me with that point.
Yeah, it's funny when everybody made a big deal about, in fact, I think it was Dov Kleiman, which nobody cares what he says anyway, but he made a comment about, well, if the Chiefs keep making moves like releasing Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes won't be there very long. Well, okay, first of all, he was dead wrong because, and in fact, I think this other guy, Vanderam or whatever his name is, he said the same thing. And here's the thing: they had already had conversations with Mahomes and said, "Look, this is what we think. This is what we might do. This is the reasons why. What's your opinion on this?" When it came to Tyreek Hill, because if you don't, arguably he was his, his almost a security blanket versus, well, I guess really Kelsey's more of a security blanket than anyone, but he was that number one guy that you always could depend on for the most part. Veach did it a different way. He went a different direction. He thought, okay, I'm watching, and he did it right at the right time. He waited for all these teams to load up with these small, speedy corners and safeties to try to keep up with Tyreek Hill, to try to keep up with everything that was going on with our team, because they just couldn't figure out how to beat us for the most part, unless it was, on the defensive side of the ball, which we allowed a couple teams to beat us. But he did it at the right time. He said, okay, well, they just loaded up with all these guys that are 5'9", 5'10". They don't have the vertical. They don't have this. They don't have the speed, and they're definitely going to get run over. So let's just do a 360, and we're going to bring in all these 6-foot+ guys that no one's going to be prepared to stop. And when they explain it to a quarterback in that realm, because Mahomes is a guy that can throw to anybody and they're going to catch the ball. He makes everybody better. I mean, he's proven that year in, year out. He's made everybody better. So I think when it comes to roster moves, you have to go to your quarterback. He's the guy on the field. He's the guy that's actually throwing the football. He's the one that knows who belongs out there, who doesn't belong out there, who's able to make the catches. He figures this out during training camp and OTAs. He's already known this, throughout the off season. And then when you get into the regular season and you're throwing a ball to a guy that just runs backwards, as we've seen with the Chiefs a few times, with one particular player that's now with the Raiders, which I happen to like a lot. But again, he's made some crazy, I'm talking about D-Rob. He's made some crazy catches and acrobatic, amazing catches. But then other times when it's over the middle, or, he's trying to pull that Tyreek Hill and try to be able to run backwards a little bit to be able to gain 5 more yards. He just doesn't have the speed or the agility to be able to do that. And he's done that year in and year out since Tyreek's been there. I think as far as GMs are concerned, I look at Brett Veach and I think, okay, this is a guy that who actually was Andy's basically his personal assistant to start off with, and then became a scout, scouted some of the greatest players in the NFL. And Patrick Mahomes was one of them. Everybody from basically 2013 on, Veach had a hand in. He understands the game, even though he didn't play it at an NFL level. He understands it. A lot of GMs have never played the game. They're more of a, how should I word this? I guess they're more of a administrative role than they are a football guy. And when you get into situations that you're not a football guy, but you're out there doing it, it's similar to, the car business is a great example. You got a guy that's building CRMs for the car business, never been in the car business. So he doesn't know anything about it. He's just building it based off of what he sees, on analytics or another computer algorithm that somebody else built. So you have to be able to understand the game very well, to draft well, to bring in good free agents, and also build a winning team. And I think a lot of that, everybody learns from everyone. That's the one thing that I learned years ago from Marty Schottenheimer is he learned something new every day when it came to the players, when it came to the GMs, when it came to the ownership. He learns from everybody. It could be a rookie. It could be a seasoned vet. He learns something new every day. So I think, it's one of those situations that, like with your situation in Washington, that's a totally different thing. I'm sorry, but he shouldn't be an owner. He should have been booted a long time ago. He's been a problem since he's been in the league. He's ruined a lot of players' careers. He's ruined some coaches' careers now. There's a lot of animosity going on with emails and sex parties and drug parties and everything else that him and Jay Gruden got involved with. And in fact, there for a year, he was basically shunned, and his wife was running the team, air quotes. But I think when it all said and done, they may end up making him sell that team. I don't see why they would keep him around. I mean, he's been a problem for a long time. So he's a billionaire's son. I mean, when you really think about it, you know, he's not some self-made billionaire. He's just not. I mean, everybody knows that. So he bought a team, but he shouldn't have been able to buy, and he's made a mockery of it to a degree, a mockery of the NFL, and I think, like Caleb said, I think it just has to go into where everybody, they know their role, but again, they also know that, like Andy, he talks to everybody. They even talked to Travis Kelce about getting rid of Tyreek Hill. That wasn't let's just do it and move forward. You know, if you leave somebody hanging, especially an elite quarterback, and you don't give them, like, look what happened to Lamar Jackson. He had no clue on anything that was going on. Nothing. He had no clue. He found out on Twitter. I mean, he found out on Twitter, and you can tell by his reactions how he found out. So you just can't do that. I mean, they did it with Kirk Cousins. He found 2 days later on Twitter that he was basically cut and sent or shipped off to Minnesota or whatever. However that played out. But I think you have to have some communication between everybody, and I think that of course, if you're going into the league with a Drew Lock or somebody like that, yeah, you may want to. You're going to learn from him to a degree on some certain things, especially something that's going on the field. But he's not the guy you're going to go to and say, "Hey, this is what we're going to do. It's a major move. What do you think?" Because really, he doesn't have the experience or the. You shouldn't have those expectations to think he would know what to do at that point. So I guess it's a give and take on both sides when it comes to that.
And I think Fionn brings up a very good point. One thing I would say about the Washington football team, I always kind of admired their head coach. I mean, they almost beat the Buccaneers in the playoff game, and they've done pretty good in contention. And fortunately, we see sometimes, not all, sometimes you have owners that don't do good things. But I would say shout out to the Washington football team because they have been able to do pretty good job under all the stuff they deal with. And I mean, to see their coach, and I think it's Heineke. Is that his name, Fionn?
Yep.
Heineke, he's done. I mean, from what I've seen, I mean, he's done everything he can do. So when it comes to the end of the day, I think teams like Washington football team, they're going to hit their stride pretty soon. I mean, they got a stacked defensive line. I mean, haven't they drafted a defense line like the last 5 years in the first couple rounds?
Yep. Yeah. At one point at the start of the season last year, all 4 D linemen were first round draft picks. So they've got a pretty stud D line, I have to say.
Yeah. And Ron Rivera is a great guy. I mean, I'm surprised he's there. Dealing with Snyder, that surprises me a little bit because he's a different. Yeah. He's just a great guy all the way around. So I was kind of surprising to me that he's stuck around as long as he has. So
yeah, and Caleb, as you said, I really do think they've done a good job as well because there was rumors that it did get to the dressing room. Do you know what I mean? It's not like the dressing room was able to shut it out. There was so much noise coming from the ownership level, which I would argue should never really be. Like you said, there tend to be just billionaires who buy these teams. They don't necessarily know anything about football. So I have to give a credit. And again, like I like to point out to a lot of people, sure, it wasn't as good a season as we wanted. A lot of injuries on the defense derailed it, but also how many teams could get the amount of wins that Washington did using their backup quarterback for the entire season?
Exactly.
It was a rough go, and look, Heineke has plenty of limitations. I don't think he's going to be a starter necessarily, but he's now proved that he's got a lot of experience and a nice and cheap backup quarterback to have in the NFL.
That's how you build the teams. I mean, you see what Dara and the Seahawks, what they were doing for a long time. Russell Wilson was on the rookie deal, and they were to go to 2 Super Bowls, win 1 Super Bowl. So we see many different things that happen. My next question, kind of the next phase of the whole thing. Would you guys say this is probably the craziest draft we've seen in years past? Dara, I want to hear from you first.
Off the top of my head, I would agree. I'm trying to think of one that had as many moves during the first round. As we saw, so many teams are trying desperately to get back into that first round. Especially for a draft that a lot of people were hyping up for the wrong reasons in terms of trying to hype up these quarterbacks to be these top 10. And look, I drank from the Kool-Aid as well. I was mistaken because I thought the Seahawks were going to use their pick on a Malik Willis or
That's who I
a
thought,
quarterback,
Yeah.
which they did obviously in the end. And I thought a few quarterbacks were actually going to go in the first round, and it ended up just being the one with Kenny Pickett going to Pittsburgh. And that's it. And look, it's done every year. That players are hyped up to this level and to try and, you know, obviously to get readers, to try and get clicks. And I understand that. And normally though, most years you do have that standout quarterback that will go number one, or, you know, like a Kyler Murray that year, or you have like even the year Mahomes went, he wasn't actually a prospective number one pick, but he was a first rounder. I think who was it? Was it Mitch Trubisky that went first that year?
No, it was Mayfield. Mayfield went first.
Yeah, then Trubinsky.
Then Trubisky went second, and I think Mahomes was third, and then
was Mayfield?
No, I think it was the other way around.
Was Mayfield not in Darnold's year?
Oh, never mind. I think I'm wrong.
Right.
Yeah, no,
Trubinsky went number one that year, and that because I remember because Mahomes, after we smoked Chicago, he ran off the field counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because he went 10th, you know, and I remember him counting that off. I think
Trubisky went second or third, but I see you guys are.
I could be wrong. I mean, he's right. I mean, there was a lot of weird. The quarterbacks this year weren't the cream of the crop. I mean, I did think Malik Willis should have went earlier than he did. He did things that, you know, he left Purdue and went to a small school in Liberty to help them grow, help them get put on the map. Had a hell of a run there, and I think he should have went. I don't know why you guys didn't pick him. I really don't know what they didn't see in him.
I'm not sure either, but getting Charles Cross, the left tackle, to be your guy for the next 10 years is definitely a fine second choice. I have absolutely no problems with that at all. If it was, I have the feeling that I think it was it the Texans that they picked Singletary surprisingly for pick number 3, and I think that everyone thought that means that there would be a tackle available. So if there wasn't a tackle available, the top 3 that were there, I think Seattle probably would have traded back anyway. I don't think they wanted to go into the quarterback market this year. Maybe they wanted to see what they had in luck. I don't know. Maybe they're still going to have a look at possibly getting a Baker Mayfield in if they can try and get the Browns to pay most of his salary for the year. Or they are just saying, look, next year we have 2 first-round picks. We'll see where we are, and the draft class next year is going to be better, because I think fans can deal with maybe 1 year of mediocrity and maybe like going back to your original question though, this was one of the craziest sort of, especially first rounds, that I've ever seen in a draft, with the amount of moves that were made at so many teams, like I said, trying to get back into the first round, because I think it was from pick 10 to about 40. That's when he said the real sort of talent was, and you could see a lot of teams just trying to get back in there.
What do you think,
For me, what was really cool was not having that guaranteed number 1 pick. I mean, a lot of times it's obviously the top of the quarterback tier of whatever year comes out. So for me, that was cool. And then obviously even to have the last minute switch, the betting kind of guessed that it was going to happen, but I thought that was very interesting that they didn't have that. And I really felt one thing that was strange for me is I thought everyone kind of did the sensible thing in the first round. No one pick jumps out at me where I'm kind of asking, what were they thinking there? Sure, maybe you could argue, was Kenny Pickett the best quarterback available for Pittsburgh? But obviously he's a pick guy. He played basically in the facility for the last 4 years. So there's a lot of other stuff going on. And yeah, you might say, well, maybe Seattle should have taken a quarterback. But like Dara mentioned, that tackle it's not much of a downgrade, or even a downgrade at all, depending on who you talk to. So that was interesting for me. Normally one team puts their foot in it. Even the Jets managed to draft well.
They did.
And they had a lot of first round draft picks. So when the Jets are drafting well, you know, it's a pretty good draft. So that's what really stood out to me. That's why I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you there on that. To me, I mean, I've been around every draft for the last 31 years, and I got to tell you, 32 years now. That was the craziest draft I've ever seen. We did a Spaces actually, and we had I don't know a couple hundred people in there, I think, and it was just everybody was like, "What the hell is going on?" I mean, what I was more blown away that, and I'm still a big Malik Willis fan. I don't understand how he didn't get picked earlier. After watching all of his film, Caleb actually sent me his film, and I watched it, and I'm like, man, this kid is phenomenal. And the more I watched, the more I thought, man, he would be a good fit in Seattle. He moves well. He's got that Russell Wilson stature. But he's also younger, got more agility. I just thought he would be a great fit there. I was kind of blown away that they didn't grab him. But again, going back to something that you just said about Seattle, they had Russell Wilson all those years, and then they decided to go ahead and beef up their offensive line when he's gone, which they should have done prior to that. I mean, he did need some protection. I mean, he was the only weapon they had on the offensive side of the ball for a while. And it was like, man, at some point at 33, 34 years old, that's going to start wearing down on you. And I think he's 33 now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just a crazy draft. We had our draft picks and we hit 4 for 4. Caleb and Keaton put together a really good draft board, and they were 4 for 4 right off the bat. Boom, 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 boom. And then top 50, I think they ended up almost everybody that they had in the top 50 went almost to their respective teams to a degree. And I was pretty impressed with that, but I don't know. It was the craziest draft I've ever seen.
One thing I would say is that talent wise was really there. And when Keaton and I were looking at the draft, I was like, wow, there's this is deep. And all the positions of many of these teams need, like Saddle needs, like the Washington football team needs, like all these teams need. There were really deep at a lot of positions. And I saw guys, honestly, at these lower FBS levels, FCS levels, get picked in the third round, end of the first. And it kind of made me think kind of as a whole when it comes to the draft. I don't know how you feel about this too. These guys from the HBCU colleges, the guys from the SWAC conferences, the FCS Division II, honestly, they can get a chance and do some great things. I know the college I went to, just north, is a really good football powerhouse called Northwest Missouri State, and they had 2 guys get drafted, and I think we had another 2 guys end up going get camp invites. And I just kind of think as a whole, like, if you really want to find these players, you have to do your research. And I kind of feel like a lot of the teams around really did a good job of like looking and trying to find guys are going to work. Like prime example, the Jets. I mean, I feel like they kind of hit on pretty much all of their draft picks. I was fairly impressed because normally the Jets are that team that ends up taking that one guy and you're just kind of like, this is not going to work. And next thing you know, that guy doesn't have a good season. He's there for another season, doesn't get cut, gets to another team, and that's just kind of it. So I think pretty much a lot of the teams did really good. I was surprised though with the Marquise Brown trade and also the AJ Brown trade to the Eagles. To see moves like that happen and multiple picks were coming, I'm seeing a new age of GMs more so that kind of played Madden. Have you guys played Madden in franchise mode and like trade away all your picks and stuff? I kind of feel like we're kind of at that point where it's going to be happening. It was just kind of interesting to me as a whole to see kind of all these different moves happening. Like, wow, this is kind of cool. I mean, there's some drama, but it's interesting to see how the NFL can completely change overnight fairly quickly, just with one night.
Yeah, how about?
Do you think that's based on the Rams, just because they kind of sold out, got rid of everything, got as many free agents as they could, and many established guys as they could, and just said, "Hey, we're not afraid to have no first round picks for 3-4 years, and let's just go and get the talent first."
I think I see what you're saying. I think with the Rams, what they were able to do, they were able to hit on the later round picks. Such as I think Cooper Kupp, I believe, was a 3rd round pick, and they were able to get some other guys that they've been to solidify and also undrafted free agents. And I think that's one thing. I always say the Chiefs and the 49ers are very, very good at getting talent, especially in the undrafted pool. And the Rams have been able to do that, been able to be successful. And I think when the teams trade away picks, that's fine and all, but you have to make sure you bring in guys that can help. So I think there is some of that Los Angeles Rams, that new identity is coming out. I don't know if it's going to hit them, but somehow it's continuing to work for them, and they still have so much money. Like, When they signed Bobby Wagner, I was really surprised. Like, I thought they didn't have that much money. When they signed Allen Robinson, I was like, whoa, where's all this money coming from? But we'll see. To tell the tape, they won the Super Bowl. Let's see if they can continue it. But I can see teams starting to go ahead and push that direction where they're gonna trade away a pick. I mean, we see the Chiefs in Veach's first 3 years, 2 of the years he traded away their first round pick in order to get a proven player that could help. 1 year it was Frank Clark. They won the Super Bowl. The next year that was Orlando Brown. They got to the AFC Championship game. So I think it just kind of depends on what's going to happen overall as a whole.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think that when you really look at it, and we've talked about this for so many years now, but a lot of your talent comes from the later rounds. The undrafted guys. You don't necessarily have to be a first round draft pick because usually you have a brick size chip on your shoulder and you think you're going to go in and rule the world. And a lot of times that's usually with quarterbacks, but it happens with wide receivers as well. We've gotten so much talent out of these smaller schools, and Veach was like the king of bringing in all these, small school guys that, 5th, 6th round picks, undrafted guys out of Toledo and just weird schools that you would never expect somebody to go after him. And he did it. He brought in Kareem Hunt. He brought in, a lot of these guys from these smaller schools and then the later round draft picks again, that just turned out to be, phenomenal players. In fact, two of our offensive linemen, they're both later round picks, and they ended up being, one of them was nominated. It was in Rookie of the Year talks as an offensive lineman. The other one should have been. I don't know why he wasn't, but they both turned out to be top tier offensive linemen. The hunger and the need is there, and the want and the desire is always there in your later rounds, in my opinion. And in your smaller schools, those are the guys that really they have something to prove, but they're humble about it.
I mean, Russell Wilson, was he a 4th round pick?
It was
third round. So I mean,
third.
People aren't really thinking they're a 3rd round pick. Kirk Cousins, was he a 4th round pick? I believe, they drafted RG3, the whole issue between who was going to be the quarterback. But you can really find the guys you want in those later rounds, and that's something I think is very important when it comes to the end of the day. If you can do that and draft the right guys, it's going to be very, very beneficial for your team moving forward. I'm starting to see. And JP and I, we talked about this on the show, and actually a NFL player, I forgot who it was. I don't know if you guys saw this tweet, but did you guys see the tweet where someone said, why don't basically the NFL have a farm system? Did you guys see that tweet? What are your guys' thoughts about a possible NFL farm system?
Well, that's what I thought was in the works, because of the deal. I think, who was it? Was it the XFL? They signed a deal with the NFL. Mm-hmm. I thought maybe that they were going to take some players, and the NFL would sort of use it as a feeder league. Mm-hmm. Which is, it's not the worst idea, because like you obviously the college level is at a certain level, but you get to the NFL and it's a whole new world, and for a lot of players that can be sort of a little too daunting. For any situation, whether if it is just the NFL or even if it's a job, a big promotion, you could find it daunting. So to have a sort of a league in the middle, sort of something like what do they call it now? Sorry, my NBA knowledge is not great, but what do they call the league?
The G League, is
it? Yeah, the G League.
Mm-hmm. The G League they have for draft picks and stuff like that to sort of get ready to an NBA, and they have the minors in baseball as well to help guys that are maybe not Major League Baseball ready. So there's nothing there at the NFL for the moment, and it's the thing that will help make an NFL's decision is money. So if it is profitable in any way, they'll definitely look into it, and I'm sure there's ways that they could make it profitable.
Yeah, the guys that I've talked to about it, and we have been talking about it for a long time that they should have done this, but the guys that I've talked to about it have said the only concern that they've had is that you're trying to get guys ready to step into the NFL and be able to just be instant impacts and get themselves ready for that. You also have to worry about the fact that this is a different style compared to the NBA and Major League Baseball, especially Major League Baseball, is that there's always that higher chance for injury, and then it may ruin their careers for the rest of their lives. that was their only concern with it, was the injury factor. It wasn't a money thing, because they're definitely going to make money on it. It's more of an injury thing, and especially if it's players, and going to your point, there's a huge leap from college to the NFL. No matter what people think, that's the speed's different, the coaching's different, everything's different. It's just not the same, and hell, the rules are everything's different. So I think it's a good idea. I think they should have it, but I think they should have it. They need to design it in a way that these players are a little bit more protected. Just given the fact that, God forbid, you brought in, just say who's that right tackle you guys grabbed from Seattle?
Lucas.
Yeah, and he went into that league and then got injured, and then it kind of killed his NFL career. Or you brought in, just say, even a Russell Wilson, and he went into a league like that, or Pat Mahomes, or anybody for that matter, and then they get injured and they're not the same anymore. So they have to figure out a way of doing it to where it keeps them relatively safe and still get them ready for the NFL. And I think that's the biggest fear that they have, is that they're going to waste some talent and waste some careers, and also hurt their pocket in the NFL, because those players, they could turn out. And right now, the way things are going, there's so many day one starters that are coming out of the draft. I mean, it's crazy how many day one starters are just popping out of the woodwork. And I think a lot of it goes back to the NFL and college working together to get these guys ready. And a lot of colleges, like Vanderbilt is especially one of those colleges, even though it is not, the top of the echelon when it comes to football colleges, but they are very, their mindset's there to get them ready for the NFL. If they're going to be able to, make it to that point, they're going to make sure that these guys are ready for it. So I don't know that. I mean, I think it's going to happen. I think they're just going to have to figure out a way of making sure these guys are protected a little bit more, whether it be a different style of tackling or whatever the case may be. They're going to have to be able to make sure that they're relatively safe, so when they do make it to the NFL, they're not injured. And you don't want to waste their legs. You don't want to. You want them to come in fresh. So that was the whole idea behind the practice squad, was they practice, they do what they have to do, they play simulated games, things of that nature, but they don't beat the hell out of each other, so they're fresh when they do step on the field. We had a great example of Jody Fortson. He was on the practice squad for 3 years, Caleb?
Yeah, 3 seasons.
3 seasons. And he came out just unbelievable talent, which we saw his first preseason game, his first season, with us. We thought, why is this kid not on the 53? But there was a reason behind it, and a lot of it was just learning the playbook, and we also had talent on the field that they wanted to keep on the field, but he came out, he had a great 5 for 5. I mean, he had like 148% catch rate, and then got injured, and he was out for the rest of the season. Now he is coming back this year, and he's going to be a force. I mean, the kid is phenomenal. A lot of people don't know his name, but you will after this season. If you don't know his name now, you will. I'll just put it that way. He's unbelievable. He was a hybrid. He was actually came out as a wide receiver, a big wide receiver.
Like 6'7"? No, 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah, 6'6", 245 pounds, just a big ass wide receiver. And it was kind of comical because Caleb and I, somebody had given me an idea from the team at one point back in February of last year that they were going to, we talked about making him a hybrid player. We actually said he should be, a hybrid where he could be either tight end or wide receiver, put him in that, that position and see how well he does. And then a month later it came out and they said, well, they were going to make him a tight end. He's going to be more of a hybrid player. And we were like, yeah, because he's that guy that, can play either position and do well at it. There's so many guys out there, especially, when you look at the defensive side of the ball as well, so many guys that are coming in that they may come in as a corner, but they can play all 4 positions: safety, corner, slot, press, outside. It doesn't matter. They can play, strong safety. there's just so much talent that these guys have accumulated over the years in college and even in high school, where they played, they're multifaceted players that now you don't know where they're going to line up, and they may come in as a corner, ended up a strong safety, and it could swap in the middle of the season. If somebody goes down, you got a player that's going to be able to fit into that mold. So I think they're just going to have to work it out in a way that these players are protected more, because you don't want to run them before their career starts, I guess, is really how you got to look at it. And they're going to have to get paid too. I mean, regardless, they're still, to play in a separate league, it can't be like it was, the Canadian Football League, where you made this amount of money and that was kind of the cap of where you were going to go. You're going to, they're going to have to really pay these guys to go out there and play.
Yeah, the whole money dynamic where like the veteran minimum is going to change. I mean, you're going to have to look at a complete overhaul. And I know it's difficult whenever you want to have like a second tier league, because like JP said, injuries, like you guys agree, injuries are something that could come about. So they'll have to figure out some medium, but I think it should be a way where the teams can be able to store some talent and kind of use them. Now, maybe a 7v7 league. I don't know. They're just kind of my thoughts. But when you look into the day, something probably will end up happening eventually. But go ahead.
Just really quickly, I think the 7v7 league is really good, because I think the one thing that the other startup leagues has taught us is there might be 20% more talent than can fit on an NFL roster, but unfortunately there's not 100%. The quality of football in the XFL, the USFL is nowhere near the NFL. So like you said, Caleb, there should be a way that we can get the maximum talent, but obviously, I mean, that's the big problem with these small school guys, right? They're extremely talented, but it's very hard to evaluate them, because the guys they're coming up against are not of the same level of talent. So I think having that smaller group where you can really condense that second tier of talent a little bit more, I think that's going to get extra value for money. So I think a 7v7 or something, or just something like you said. And even on the defense, I think it can benefit those small schools, because even on the defense, even more than on the offense, if the offense you're playing against goes around you, you can be a top talent, but it's very hard to affect the game from, say, a middle linebacker position if they're throwing a lot of screens, because they know you don't have the corners to hold up against it. So I think that like you guys both said, you nailed it on the head. The more talent evaluation they can get in the NFL, the better. But like you said, I don't believe there is a whole other 52-man roster level of talent. So they're going to have to find some way of scraping those guys out without bringing too much of the dead weight with them.
Yeah, maybe something like 20 players ish. I mean, you can cut the season probably down by half at least, and give them a small sample size and just kind of see where it goes. But I know you guys are Seattle, and then the Commanders, you guys, that's your teams. What are your guys' thoughts coming to the season? What are you guys expecting to see from teams? So, Dar, let's go and start off with you.
To be honest, I'm not expecting a lot. As we all do with our own teams, when the schedule release comes out, we go through each game and say, oh, they could win that one, they'll lose that one, they'll win that one, they'll lose that one. Early thoughts, obviously, before we get into training camps and stuff, I can't see any more than 6 wins for Seattle next season. It's tough because we're playing the NFC South, so we're playing the Bucks, the Saints, the Panthers, and the Falcons, and then of course we're playing you guys in your division, the AFC West. I think it's a Christmas. Is it Christmas Day or a day after Christmas Day that we're actually we're in Arrowhead playing you guys?
I think so.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough, and of course, week 1 starting with the return of Russ as well, which isn't great. One positive side for myself personally is the Seahawks are playing in Germany this year, so I get to go to Germany and I get to see them play Germany. So I'm going to look forward to that. But yeah, like I said, it like I mentioned earlier on, the thing that I'm going to be looking at most this year is to see how the new defensive scheme and the new personnel and the new rotations are going to work with Clint Hurt is the name of the new defensive coordinator. He was a defensive line coach for the last few years. So that's what I'm looking forward to most. I'm not expecting a lot of wins, but at least if they can make the games interesting, I'm excited to see Kenneth Walker as well.
He's a good running back. I wanted the Chiefs to get him. He's really good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. There was a lot of was a lot of hate for the pick on the Seahawks side of Twitter, mostly because not the player, but because of where he was picked. But I still have the argument, if they wait until their next pick, he wouldn't have been there. So you just take him. You're going to need him because they have issues with health at running back with the likes of Chris Carson, who we're not even sure is going to come back this year after neck surgery last year. And Rashad Penny, who had a good end to the season, but his previous 3.5 years with the team didn't really show anything to prove that he will be the number one guy in Seattle going forward. So I'm looking forward to seeing Kenneth Walker and the defense. Other than that, there's not a lot to be looking forward to. There won't be any Super Bowl run. They're just hoping for some exciting games.
Do you think they can upset a couple teams here or there? Maybe take out the 49ers one game, maybe the Rams. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Deebo Samuel. I mean, that thing's still up in the air. Do you think they can upset someone?
Yeah, I think they'll have a few upsets for sure. To just mess up other teams' playoff hopes. And if they can mess up the Rams, I'm always on board for that. Normally the 49ers are the Seahawks rivals, but for me, it's always been the Rams because the Seahawks would always make Jared Goff look like the MVP anytime he played them. So that always pissed me off.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. We did that one year. We made him look like the cream of the crop of quarterbacks out there, going toe to toe with Mahomes, and it was the 31st ranked defense that we had that allowed that. But you see where he's at now. So, it's just that's a strange situation. What's your thoughts, man? What do you think about Washington? What do you think you got going this year?
Yeah, I think I'm preaching patience, number one, because Wentz has been around the league a lot now in the last couple of years. His confidence is a little bit battered. And the way I see it, most of his issues are decision making. And I believe they have a good coaching structure. I do think Ron Rivera is a great coach. Obviously, he's defensive minded. So we're going to have to get some good talent around him on the offensive side. But I believe if you can give him a bit of patience, a bit of a stable environment that he knows that we're going to encourage him and teach him to get away from what he was doing. Because let's not forget, this guy was MVP at one stage. So he's definitely got a high upside. It's just about getting rid of that recent low end side. And on the other end, I'd like us to be a little bit more dynamic. I felt a lot of times Washington obviously not helped on offense by the limitations of Heineke, which comes with the territory as a backup, as we already talked about. But on the defense as well, I don't think we even challenged people as much as some other teams did. I think we were somewhat, I don't want to say predictable, but I think teams caught on to whatever the game plan was that week. And I don't know if we made enough adjustments in terms of adding in some exotic blitz, which you don't have to run all the time, but it needs to be in there. It needs to keep the other teams honest. And I don't think Washington managed to do that. So that's what I'm doing. I want to give us a year. I'd like to be competitive in the NFC East. Obviously, everyone wants to be competitive in their division. I don't believe Dallas is a juggernaut. We see them every year.
Wow.
Everyone loves to hype them. I think everyone loves to hype them just to watch them fall.
Yes, so, that's exactly what happened. Stephen A. Smith, he likes to see them fall. We all love that at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's no different than our division with the Chargers. I mean, honestly, they all this year again, the Chargers are going to win the AFC. It's every year for the last 7 years, the Chargers are going to win the AFC. Last year, they didn't make the playoffs. So I think that's the same thing. They don't really have the greatest fan base, and I think it's just hype to watch them fall on their ass. I mean, really, I think when I look at Herbert, I think he's better than most quarterbacks in the league as far as his age is concerned, but I also see a lot of Phillip Rivers in him. And it's weird, but I see that in him. He's got the arm talent. He's got the mindset. He's not a crybaby, which is totally different than Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers cries about when the wind blows, if it doesn't blow, if a fan, yells at him, it doesn't matter what it is. He was throwing a fit. But that team as a whole has problems. And I think that's what you're going to see a lot of times with other teams in the NFL is that it's not so much the player. Now, one thing I want to go to Carson Wentz. I've been a proponent of his simply because you're right. He was an MVP. He probably would have went to the Super Bowl that year hadn't he got hurt, and it ended up being Nick Foles. But regardless, he's a mind guy. Okay, he's a feelings guy. He lets everything get to him mentally. And when you play in Philadelphia, If you allow that to happen, it will run your career. And it happened to him. It's not the injury that messed with him; it's his mindset. He was so battered and bruised mentally from the fan base there that it's just hard to. Some players can't come back from it. He's one of those guys.
I
Hopefully,
don't think he had adequate help. I feel
no,
like they kind of the help production wise really dropped off, and at one point they didn't. I don't think they really had a good receiver.
no,
And
they
it was
didn't.
just a whole sort of issues they just weren't able to overcome. And like he was there and did to the bitter end,
Yeah.
but they just weren't able to get it done.
Well, and
Yeah,
he
they were
wanted
dealing
to
with
leave.
Aguilar and
Yeah, but he wanted to leave. I mean, he couldn't stand it anymore. You know, it was no different than their head coach. He was actually for us, and I can't think of his name right now.
Peterson.
Doug Peterson. He wanted to leave. It was when your owner says you got complete control of the team, but yet I want you to do it this way or you're out. After you just won a Super Bowl, okay, well, and you won it with a backup quarterback. So, yeah, I'm going to leave too. But it does mess with your psyche. You know, there's players out there that aren't. Yeah, everybody's got a feelings. Everybody's got a heart. Everybody has, you know, emotions, and we have the same problem with some of our fans. You know, they hammered McCall Hardman for a solid year. It got to him. I mean, it did. There was no doubt about it. But last year, he proved that he is a phenomenal player. He can be a phenomenal player. He just had to get it out of his mind that 5-10% of the fan base that's here that decides just to trash everybody and hates every pick that we ever make, hates every player we have, other than Mahomes, of course. You just have to block those guys out, and that's something Wentz, I think, has to do as well. He's going to have to, and with Ron Rivera, as calm as he is and such a class act head coach, he's a player's coach, and I think he's going to be able to get his mindset straight. I really do.
yeah. And I think they understand as well, as you mentioned, JP. They understand who they're getting as well. I don't think the Colts did. I mean, we discussed this on our show this week, was that like he went 27-8, I believe, for touchdowns to interceptions last season. He played pretty well. Sure, maybe he missed a couple of shots here and there or didn't win a game in the end, right at the end when it counted. But I mean, to get kicked out, fine. But to be trashed on the way out as well by the owner and the coach, it beggars belief. So I think, that's what I agree with you, JP. I think we need to preach patience. We need to understand that, hey, this year might not be the hottest, but I think if Washington shows him that we see the talent, we think you can make it, we believe in you, that will help him. If we can get Dan Snyder out, that's going to buy him 2-3 years of the fan base. The fan base won't care what Wentz does. We'll be too busy celebrating that Dan Snyder's gone, that I think that'll give him a break as well. I don't think anyone will be looking at Wentz. So that could play in his favor. You never know. That might work out. And hey, look, if he gets back to the MVP level, that's a huge upgrade at quarterback that Washington hasn't had for probably 10 years at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the last guy you guys had that, and he shouldn't. I mean, too bad he got injured, was Alex Smith. As far as the mindset was concerned and talent, he had it. It was just, and honestly, you know, somebody brought up Kirk Cousins earlier. He, in my opinion, he's kind of lived up to his draft pick. Actually, he probably should have went high later in the draft. He, you know, in his 4 or 5 years in Washington, he actually had a losing record, and then he gets. Go ahead.
Even worse, JP, even worse. I think there was 3 years in a row at Washington when he was the starting quarterback that we ended the season with a win and you're in scenario where we've got to win the game to make the playoffs. And he did not win a single time. Unfortunately, one of those even I managed to get, we don't get to see a lot of games, and I managed to be over in New York. New York were out of the playoffs. They were playing nobody. It was freezing cold day. All he had to do was make it a couple of throws. They were selling out to stop the run, and he couldn't do it, and he hasn't done it, and he hasn't done it with Minnesota either.
No,
so
he hasn't.
I think
you're right.
So I think
going to say something about just the Carson Wentz thing and his time with the Colts. I don't think a lot of people mention that how poor that receiving core in Indianapolis was last year. You know, okay, it's all great. You had Jonathan Taylor, great running back and stuff like that, but you know, you had an aging T.Y. Hilton who was injured. You know, you had what was it? You had Pittman and you had like Zach Pascal there as well. Like these guys aren't you know, household wide receiver names that you're going to be comfortable throwing to all the time, you know. So that's where I think he gets a little unfairly treated. It was the same in his last season with Philadelphia. Again, he had no one to throw to. He had what was it, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, who was a bust. You had Jalen Reagor, who was another bust. Like he can't help it if the GM and the coach make bad draft decisions.
Exactly.
So I think with that now he has hopefully Terry McLaurin, if he can sort out his contract issues, where that he's going to have a really good wide receiver there to throw to. He's going to have Logan Thomas, who's a tight end that I like, and you know I think they got someone as well. Fionn, was it Dotson or something in the draft?
Dotson
as well?
is a
Jahan Dotson.
shifty slot guy. Yeah, shifty slot guy. I think that's a good. If we can get all three going, if we can get De'Ami Brown, who is at the moment a pure speed guy, I think he needs a little bit more refinement. But that all of a sudden we've gone from being a very limited offense to now having a blow the top off, a deep middle guy in McLaurin, a short middle guy in Dotson, and then kind of middle of the field in general, that kind of short intermediate in the tight end Logan. So it can, as you said, Caleb, at the start, I think Washington is one of these teams where if enough of the draft picks break our way that we thought, I personally, I don't think we did well out of last season's haul. Like I said, De'Ami Brown didn't play great. Jamin Davis, we expected to be a starter and really didn't live up to that bill. And you know what I mean? So there's a couple of guys that didn't break where we needed them to. If we get this draft class to break the way we need, I think we can be really competitive. I'll take it, even if we're just competitive in the NFC East. I wouldn't mind walking over the Giants, splitting it with the Eagles and the Cowboys, finishing top of the division. And if we can scrape a playoff win, that'd be really nice. But I would call it a success if we can win the division this season.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. And I look, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and say this because I will. Terry was almost, I mean, we actually had some conversations about Terry. So just so you know, we actually wanted him. We may still want him. I don't know how that's going to work out, but that was a player that was on Veach's list. And I know he wanted out of Washington there for a little bit. And I don't know where his mindset is now, but he is a very underrated talent, in my opinion, just because of what he's had to deal with, since he's gotten into the league. But if you guys are able to hang on to him and have a Wentz back there with a good mindset, that's a scary combination. I mean, it just really is. He's good. That kid's good. So
he is, and a super, like you said, a super professional guy. He's not in the media. He's not on social media that much. Like there's no news stories coming out. Like you said, it's hard to know what his mentality is. Like you said, he's been put through the ringer. So if he did want to move on, I could appreciate that. But like you said, it's not like he's splashing stuff all over the tabloids saying I want to get out or I wanted this or I need a better quarterback or whatever. He's just put his head down. He played professionally, got 1,000 yards last season, which is a great thing for him to achieve going forward. So yeah, I agree with you, JP.
Yeah. There was only one, just from what I was told through one of my guys, is that he did mention that he wanted out, and then it kind of came across Twitter a few weeks later that he had mentioned he wanted out, but they're working on his contract right now, and I think if anything, if they can work it out with him, if anybody's going to be able to do it, it's going to be Rivera, because Rivera is so good with players that he'll be able to convince him, look, we brought in a quarterback, we're going to work with them, you're going to get what you want, you're going to get what you need, what you deserve. He's not a chip on his shoulder type of guy anyway. So from what everybody I've talked to said, he's very humble and just wants to play the game. And of course, he wants his accolades, but in the same aspect, he's patient enough to wait for him. And I think that's something that, is an attribute that you don't get a lot of times with, you look at a DK Metcalf that, Jesus, I mean, he screamed it. His rookie year, he's screaming at his head coach and his quarterback while he's laying on his back after he got triple covered and tripped. And he's pissed off because he didn't get the ball thrown to him. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you don't want. No offense. But I think he's kind of, he may have grown out of that a little bit, but I don't know how he feels this year with, with Drew Lock coming in, but there was some talk about the Chiefs getting DK, and I knew that was never going to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. Everybody I had talked to said that's impossible. It's not going to happen.
He even said on Twitter he doesn't want to go. It's too cold, apparently.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Like, no, it's not. And in fact, it's weird because at one time during the combine, he said who wouldn't want to play with Pat Mahomes? That was one of his biggest things. He was hoping he would get drafted by the Chiefs because he wanted to play with Mahomes. But the whole thing is that if you're Seattle and you're has any intelligence at all, when you don't have a quarterback at the time they didn't have one, and you go to a Drew Lock, you better hope and pray you keep your best wide receiver, because you need to surround that quarterback with every bit of talent you can surround him with.
It's interesting that you mentioned about that, because all the talk at the moment is that Pete's going to go back to his run first mentality, where he's going to have his quarterback maybe throw it like less than 20 times a game. Probably take the pressure. Maybe that's why there's not an urgency to get a quarterback in this last draft. And DK had done interviews and he says they're in the negotiations and he expects to be Seattle in a long time. And I brought up this question with a guest that we had on our own show, who works in as a Seattle reporter. And I mentioned him. I said, if you are going to a run first mentality and you're going to be having your quarterback throw it less than 20 times, with the market for wide receivers at the moment, the contract market, like we've seen with Tyreek and even just AJ Brown as an example, because he was in the same draft class as DK and the contract that he's after getting with the Eagles. Is it a good idea to put those resources into the wide receiver if you're going to be a run first team? That's just a question that I thought of myself. Just, is it an idea? And look, I don't want to lose DK. I think, like you mentioned, he had maturity issues coming into the league. I think the last 2 years especially, I think, from what I've heard, is he's taken a greater role in the dressing room to be, more of a leader instead of being, the guy that sort of has those, like I said, the issues. And I think, so it is that question. And I'd open up to you guys. If I know you guys are set for your quarterback for the next X many years until he wants to stop playing, but if it was a run first offense that the Chiefs ran, and you had, we'll use the Tyreek Hill example, he wanted a new contract, would you be willing to let him go, or would you want to keep him to sort of help, like you mentioned, your quarterback that's coming in, that's not well thought of around the league, that has struggled? Do you want to keep him there so he can target him for those 20 times a game, to use all those resources cap wise for that new contract? Or would you rather just put the resources somewhere else in terms of maybe like an offensive line to help run the ball?
I think it would just kind of depend on the situation. If we're saying that Tyreek Hill's like what he's done the lap previously and he's been really successful in getting all those yards, I mean, it would be a difficult decision. It would also, to me, want to think, all right, what can our GM and coaching staff do for the most part? Can they bring in the talent? When the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill, my first initial thought was I was shocked, but I'm like, they got 5 picks for one player. We haven't seen anything like that before. And we had 12 picks in this draft. Adding those 5 picks really helped, because the Chiefs got deep at a lot of different positions that was really going to help them. And because of that, they're in a better position. I love Tyreek Hill. One of my favorite players. You guys can see right here, I got a Tyreek Hill little thing. He was one of my favorite wide receivers I've ever seen. He's fast. He can do a lot of different things. But what it comes down to is that you really can't pay him $30 a year. I like him. I think he's great. But when it comes down to it, you got to spread that money to get 3 or 4 different guys, maybe 2 to 3, because you need depth. And what we've seen the Patriots have always done in the past is they trade the guy at the right time when they can get depth. Tyreek Hill, to a lot of things. But JP and I have been talking on the podcast is like he had a lot of drop balls. He gave up like 2 or 3 interceptions by himself at the beginning of the year. He
Plus
had
injuries.
some plus injuries. He's been actually issues with hamstrings and things like that. That the divisional round game where he had just went off. That probably solidified his career as one of a great receiver. But for trade value, I don't see it going higher than that. So for them to trade him and get those picks in return and get cap relief was very important because they could sign all these other guys, bring in the guys that can help. And I'm confident in the Chiefs coaching staff and specifically their scouting department, they can bring in some other guys. They brought in a Juju Smith-Schuster, a MVS. They got a Justin Ross on the undrafted free agents. They got a Ronald Jones. So they got several guys that can kind of help with production. So it just kind of depends on what type of offense they're going to run. But with the Chiefs, there's always like a passer offense. But they're at the point now where they can run the ball a lot more. I mean, they got an excellent offensive line. We nicknamed them the Secret Service, protecting President Mahomes, because they're just that powerful. So I think it comes into the situation, but at the end of the day, what it comes down to is if you really think your coaching staff can help. So if the Seahawks are able to get 3-4 picks for him and they can actually invest and get some talent, go ahead, because sometimes it just kind of depends on who is available and who's there. Because sometimes you could get those picks and you can flip them. I mean, there was talks that Chiefs could possibly trade 2 firsts for DK. That didn't happen. But to have that power, sometimes these picks are valuable more teams than like the Rams were like, I'm not going to trade anyone.
As far as Seattle's concerned, we're in a different situation than they are. Of course, quarterback wise, coaching wise, we're in a different situation. I would hang on to him. I would say this because the only reason I say this is because if you can say they do go to this run heavy offense and, they're going to pass the ball 20, 30 times a game, 20 times a game, whatever you want to call it. You still have that deep threat that throws everyone else off because you still have DK out there. And I think if Drew Lock doesn't work out and they decide to go grab, just say a Baker Mayfield, okay, that can actually, even though I don't like him, and I never have, and I've never been afraid not, to say that. I don't like his attitude. I don't think he's as great as he thinks he is. I think he needs a coach that can really mellow him out. And I don't think him and Carroll will get along very well, to be honest with you. I just don't see that happening. But I think you need to have that threat. We always had that threat when we were in a run heavy team back in the day. We always had that threat with JJ Burden, which was, in my opinion, the first Tyreek Hill. He was an extremely fast guy. We ran the ball 3rd, 4th down. I mean, it was Marty ball. That's what we did. But we always had a couple of wide receivers out there. Even when we had Joe Montana, we always had those wide receivers out there that would keep you on your toes. You know what I'm trying to say? And I think if you had an opportunity to hang on to him for at least one more year and see how Locke does, and maybe this is a distraction, maybe it's a deterrent, saying they're going to go to this run-heavy offense just to throw everybody off for the time being, who knows? You just don't know. I would always want to keep a top-tier wide receiver, regardless of who my quarterback is, simply because you just don't know where it's going to end up. Week 5, week 7, week 10, you don't know where you're going to be. You don't know where you're going to be at the end of, at the end of the season. Going into the following season, you may have a better quarterback at that point. So you want to kind of hang on to that guy. And it really depends on your cap situation as well. I mean, again, like Caleb said, I mean, if you're not hurting in cap and you can, somehow manipulate the cap a little bit, similar to how Veach does with a lot of his players, then why not hang on to him? I mean, it'd be, I don't know, in my opinion, it'd be silly to get rid of him. You got one of the arguably top 3 wide receiver in the league. Yeah, you may not have a top 3 quarterback right now, but you may have one 6 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now. You may have one 8 weeks into the season. So you hang on to him. I think, you're still got another year to, if you want to, because he got one more year before his rookie contract's up, right? This is his last year.
He's going into his 4th year now.
4th season. So, I mean, if it was me, I would hang on to him through the 4th season and and see how it works out. And then if you end up with a better quarterback, or if Locke somehow miraculously makes a complete 360 and turns into this great quarterback, which everybody had, high hopes for him to begin with. He just went to a shitty team. Then you got the weapon for him. But I think, in my opinion, you got to keep the weapons there for a quarterback that's struggling, because they need all the help they can get. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick before we go, guys, I just kind of want one last question. What are your early Super Bowl picks? Who are the two things you think are going to make it to Super Bowl, and then who do you think will actually win?
Fiona, I'll let you go first on this one.
Oh, that's a good one. It's so early. I mean, I guess I think I would naturally lean to the Chiefs. I don't think losing Tyreek Hill is that big a deal just because of how talented that Mahomes is. It's not like he needed Tyreek Hill to make him good. He could use him very effectively, but I don't think he needed him. And I was impressed towards the end of last season when I think maybe it was even one of the playoff games where he kind of broke out the run game for kind of two quarters right in the middle. It was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and who was the other guy you have in that backfield?
Darrell Williams.
Yeah.
And McKinnon.
Yeah. And the pair were just on fire, just breaking off kind of 10, 20-yard runs one after another. So I think that makes them very dangerous. And then, to be honest, I'm not really sure. I don't know. I'm just going to go with Aaron Rodgers for now on the Green Bay Packers. It's hard to not pick Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, every time you don't, he plays well. Every time you do, he doesn't have a great season. True. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick him at this early stage. And I think if that is the final, I'm going to take the Chiefs to win. Given we're on a Chiefs podcast, why not? Let's go for the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl.
What do you think, Dar?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm just going through like the names in the AFC, and like it's so weird. I'm looking at it in terms of two different things. Like I'm looking at the AFC teams, and I can't pick one because they're all so good, and then for the NFC teams, I can't pick one because they're all not so good.
Yeah,
so it's kind of tough, Yeah, on the NFC side of things, though, I'm pretty confident in like the fact that Aaron Rodgers doesn't have Devontae Adams this year, so I feel good that he's not going to do well this year, and it won't be another 13-3 season for them. Like the Rams have just improved their side.
That's very good. I forgot about them. Yeah, that's a pretty good choice.
I can't look past them, like Tom Brady and the Bucks. Anytime Brady's on a team, you have to give them consideration, but I don't think so. Especially with the change in head coach and the fact that I still think it's a little weird that they gave the job to Todd Bowles and didn't give it to Byron Leftwich. Considering everyone is saying that he's brilliant with Tom and Tom loves Byron. So I don't know what's going on there. So yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll say the Rams will probably go back there. And yeah, like that. I know you lost Tyreek. You have Juju there. Hopefully he can stay fit. And that shoulder injury is a thing in the past. The offensive line, it looks like it's going to get better as well. I'm still pissed off as well that Seahawks passed up on Creed Humphrey and Hughes got him because he's just such a good player. Such a good player. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Chiefs Rams. And okay. I'm gonna go with the Chiefs to win it next year.
Awesome. What do you think, JP?
It's strange because that's weirdly enough, that's who I had last year was the Chiefs and the Rams in the Super Bowl. And in fact, I think we talked on our show when you guys were on, and when they made that trade, I said the Rams will be in the Super Bowl because it was a perfect scenario for Stafford and the Rams for that matter. And they needed to get rid of Goff. He wasn't what everybody thought he was, and he's proven that again. But the Chiefs, just going back to your point, the Chiefs were top 3 to win the Super Bowl this year prior to trading Tyreek Hill, and they're top 3 after trading Tyreek Hill. So it's hard to me. When it comes to this team, if Mahomes played for if he played for Seattle, if he played for Washington, I would be picking them to go to the Super Bowl. It's just it's hard to not pick against them, and I would have to probably go with the Rams. Um, I don't see a team in the NFC right now that's better than them. There's three really good teams in the NFC when you really think about it. Like, I can't say good, but teams that are Super Bowl ready, and the Rams is one of them. So the Rams are definitely one of them. So I would have to go Chiefs and the Rams. What do you think,
Okay.
Caleb?
So this is kind of, I was hoping, I'm going to say, this is just my thoughts. I feel like this could be the Chiefs and the 49ers. If the 49ers can hit the stride they hit last season, they got a lot of pieces. It also depends if Deebo Samuel's going to come back. It says he's refalled the team. I mean, he was kind of literally the workhorse for them, and he does not like that. He wants to get some more consistency. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but I think if it's possible, and if everything goes well, I think it could be the Chiefs, the Chiefs or the 49ers. I would not be surprised if it's also the Chiefs or the Rams. I don't see the Buccaneers doing it again unless they
No.
somehow make it, but I really believe it will be the Chiefs and the 49ers. You got two teams with a lot of talent, and I think they will be back in the same position they were last year on the cusp of Super Bowl and actually will make it. And we'll see a repeat of what we saw when Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback originally.
Yep.
Yeah. The only thing about the 49ers is you're expecting a lot for Trey Lance in his first full season.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're going to trade Garoppolo because they're still like trying to fill out trades. And it kind of just depends on what happens there because it sounds like they could trade him, but he's also coming out saying, I mean, I want to be the right team. I don't mind being here. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, if it's not the 49ers, it will probably most likely be the Rams. They're the more dominant team as like a second choice to see what will happen at the end of the day.
They're pretty
But
well
honestly,
rounded.
the team can change within overnight. And we've
Yeah.
seen it happen before. And trades are probably going to happen. Once June hits, we're going to see people getting cut, probably some trades going on. So a lot of stuff can still happen even training camp. So
And then you got your last phase in September when you got the final trade cuts, or is it October? I remember what date it is, but you always got those final cuts and the trades that happen right there at the after the first month of the season. So you're right. I mean, anything can change. Anybody can get injured. Anybody can, but on paper right now, and even not on paper, if everybody stayed healthy, it looks like those would be the two teams. And and the 49ers, they're it's weird. They're one of those sneaky good teams that you never know when they're going to step up and play, lights out football. Garoppolo, I think he's gotten somewhat of a bad rap to a degree. Has he made some huge mistakes? Yeah. Has he had some great games? Yeah. But again, they're more of a run style they're a run style team. They run the ball more than they pass. So if your quarterback's not out there consistently throwing the ball, he's not going to be as accurate as you would hope. You know what I mean? And I think they're going to stick to their game plan. I think they're going to stay with that more of a run heavy style of team. It's not unheard of. It's not. Is it going to win you a Super Bowl? Not in a pass heavy league. I don't think it will, but I think they have an opportunity given the talent in the NFC right now. I mean, the AFC just took everybody from the NFC. I mean, no matter how you look at it, they took every bit of their talent and said, you know what, you guys don't need to be down there no more. We just come up here and win some games, and that's kind of what's happened. As far as the Bucks are concerned, they still don't have Gronk. He hasn't re-signed. From the last I heard, he hadn't re-signed yet. He's still contemplating retirement. They don't have AB. Mike Evans is aging a little bit. He's been injured a lot. Their defense, they lost a couple players. They did pick up a couple, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be that great. And we all know that Brady doesn't have a top 5 defense. He's not going to flourish like he does if it's the other way around. So I don't see the Bucks doing it. I think this is a huge mistake on his part to come back. He went out on a high note for the most part, and if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, or for some reason gets injured, gets his ass handed to him in the first round of the playoffs, he's going to go out. He's going to go down as it was just a huge mistake on his part. In my opinion, I think that was, and it's going to say a lot to all the everybody that just loves Brady and thinks he's the second coming of Jesus. It's not always been him. It just hasn't been. I mean, we've all talked about this. We talked about it on the last show. I mean, when Brady wins, it's always because of Brady, but when Brady loses, it's always because somebody else cost him the game. So, and his stats are lower. If you really look at it in Super Bowls and playoffs, his stats are lower than anybody else's. His stats suck in playoffs and Super Bowls. He's had one really good playoff game as far as yardage and touchdowns were concerned. And that's really about it. His averages aren't that great. So defenses win, as for 20 years they won his Super Bowls for him. So I still see, and Green Bay is not out of the question. I mean, look, when you got Aaron Rodgers, yeah, he's made last year. I almost want to, man, it almost looked like a big FU in that playoff game to the Green Bay after what they did and the way they, the problems that they had, because he did not look like himself. He didn't play like himself. It just looked like it was almost, I really don't care if I win or lose type of situation. And I'm kind of wondering when he re-signed this contract, if this wasn't just a go pound sand, because he was considering retiring. He was just going to retire and move on and do other things. And it makes me kind of wonder if he just wants the money and then says, you know what, pound sand, I don't really care if we win or lose type of situation. You just don't know with him because he's so all over the place. The guy is like, he's a strange dude. No matter how you look at it, he's just a weird guy. A week before they're going to get married is again, that ends abruptly. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know what it is. I think he drinks too much, but I could be wrong. He loves the scotch, but who knows, man? We just have to see. But I still say, I think you guys are right. I think it's probably going to end up being the Chiefs and the Rams is the two teams that stand out right now to me.
Just to throw out one, we don't want to give the Chiefs a complete whitewash to the finals. So just to throw out one competitor, I think one hurdle you guys have to get over. I think it's going to be the Bills. The Bills are good, and they got a little bit better in the draft. I think Cook at running back is a pretty good pick for them. That was probably their biggest weakness, to be honest, is that run game. So I think probably if we had to name another team in the AFC that's going to run you guys the closest, I'm gonna stick the Bills in there.
Yeah.
I would agree. The Bills are going to be a tough team. I think the Chiefs can beat them. Again, it's going to be close, but I think it's really going to be just Josh Allen and Mahomes is going to be basically the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady rivalry when it comes to the end of the day. Both of those guys are going to be going after each other, trying to see who's going to one up each other. And the way it looks like they're probably playing each other about every year.
Yeah.
For what it looks like.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I tell you what, and I one last question. I want your guys' opinion on Cincinnati. Regress, or do you think they're going to get better?
No, they hit such a high last year that no one expected them to hit. I think it's going to be tough. Like I think we mentioned it off air, that there's so many good teams in the AFC this year that there are going to be some good teams, like legitimately good teams, that won't make the playoffs, and it won't be because they're bad or they've underperformed. It's just that there's so many other good ones. I still think they have it's tough. I don't know what's going to happen now with Cleveland and Deshaun, and I don't know what's going to happen with Baltimore and Lamar and stuff, but I like what they did in the offseason. They had to get that offensive line sorted, which they have. And they've got some really good pieces on defense in the draft as well. So we'll see. I don't think they're going to make a Super Bowl, but I think they could still win the division and still make a playoff.
Yeah, that division they could win. Yeah, right now.
I agree with Dara. I think they.
Go ahead.
Sorry, JP.
No,
I think they're a better football team. They're going to be a better football team, but I don't know if they're going to go as far. It's going to be hard to get back to the Super Bowl. I think a lot of stuff broke their ways, but I think on paper, they're definitely a better football team than they were last year. And a lot of it's going to depend right on that second year progression. I know Burrow's coming into his third year, but he kind of had that COVID year and how teams adapt to Chase. And now they've got a year of that whole offense on tape for the defensive coordinators to go through. So it's gonna be difficult, but I don't expect them to regress a lot. I think Darren nailed it. I think they're going to be in that group of very good teams that it just, whatever way the season pans out, just doesn't break their way this season. That's what I'm expecting for the Bengals.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that a lot of also the referee changes are going to make a huge difference because, as we all know, he pushed off on every play. I mean, and he got away with it. And I think that's not going to go his way this year. He did it in college, and he also, he brought it into the NFL, and I don't think that's going to fly as much as it did this past season. So he's going to have to play the role the right way, and I think that may hamper him a little bit because he's used to pushing off. And he's very good at it. I mean, the guy hides it very well to the naked eye. I mean, most people that aren't really watching film a lot, they don't see it as much, but he pushes off on every play. And I think that's going to hamper him when the refs start saying, okay, wait a minute, you're 15 yards down the field and you're shoving a guy down, I'm sorry, but that's not going to work out. I see him regressing a little bit. I don't see them. They got a little tougher schedule this year. I don't think they're going to be a 4-win team by any means, but I don't see them being what they were last year. I just don't see it happening, but and it's by the way, as far as Lamar is concerned, he's not happy. So I do know that for a fact. He is not happy, and they haven't given him an extension. They went out and spent a lot of money, and they still haven't given him an extension. They made moves without him knowing it. He's just not a happy camper. So it remains to be seen how he comes out this year and plays. One, if he can stay injury free, even though that was his first real injury last year, that's the start of it. When you're a running quarterback, that's the start of it, especially not a big running quarterback. He's got twigs for legs, and I think that's just going to hurt him in the long run. So it remains to be seen how the Ravens are going to turn out this year, just given the fact that he's not happy, and they're one of those teams that makes decisions without consulting anyone, and you want to consult your franchise quarterback. So he knew nothing about anything. He finds out on Twitter, and all you see is WTF, That's basically what he's seen the entire time. You saw that come out of him about 6 times this year on Twitter. So we'll just have to see. So, but anyway, we really appreciate you guys coming on, man.
Thank you.
We always enjoy it. You guys are one of our favorites. So
just thank you for coming on. We've had you guys obviously on our show a couple of times. It's great now to be able to finally return the favor and be able to appear on your show. And listen, best of luck with the upcoming season. I'm sure we'll be talking again before it starts.
Yeah.
And listen, enjoy the rest of the off season, and thanks again.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, good luck.
Had a great time.
Yeah, we did too. And really good luck to both you guys. I think you guys got some upswing there, and everybody's got challenges. We got challenges this year. Everybody's got challenges, but you got the coaching, you got the right coaches. As long as you got the right coaches, you should be okay. And that's where you need to be, I think you both might be a little bit more surprised than you are right now about how your teams turn out at the end of the season. I have a weird feeling about that. So I think you're going to be better off than you think you are. So losing Russ wasn't the end of the world, in my opinion. So
I don't know. Look, it's as long as it's fun, as long as the games are fun next year, I'll be happy. That's all
that matters. As long as there's no blowouts and there's no, like we see what happened to the Raiders against us. We beat them, I think 68-22 or some crazy number like that in 2 games. It just is what it is. You gotta roll with the punches and build your team the right way, and I think that's what you guys got, coaches that know how to do that. So, and as long as you guys can get rid of Daniel Snyder, we'll be in good shape. So
yeah, that's the number 1 priority for us. I think the football is secondary at the moment. Let's get a new owner in there pronto.
Oh man. All right, guys. Well, again, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. We'll talk before the season starts. I'm sure we'll talk during the season, but again, we really appreciate you guys coming on.
Thank you very much.
All right,
thank you guys.
Thanks again. Chiefs Kingdom, everybody out there in the NFL world, make sure you give these guys a follow, Under the Center podcast. They do some really good stuff. They're across the pond, and we love the fact that they are, because they bring a different perspective, but also understand the game. And we've had guys on from other areas in Europe that they look at it more of a soccer game than they do a football game. So it's fun to see you guys, have guys on that understand the game and enjoy it. And that's the greatest part about this. So make sure you give these guys a follow and check out their podcast, because they really know what they're talking about. With that being said, thanks everybody for joining in, and we will talk to you next time. Peace out.
See you next time, guys.